all your school rugby, all in one place. This is Next Gen 15.
Hello and welcome back to the Next Gen 15 podcast. If you've forgotten about us, it's because we've not been here for a week, but we're back. We're here. Will Roberts is alongside me. How are you, Will? It's been a while.
It feels as though it has, because even the week before it wasn't us two. So we're together at last, and we're making it work. Yeah, it's been a really, really busy time for both of us in very good ways. So it's good that we can squeeze in a moment as things reach their crescendo to sort of talk about quite a lot, as it seems, in our running order.
Yeah, it seems like there is quite a lot. We must say a quick thank you to the esteemed Sam Roberts, actually, for stepping in a couple of weeks ago for to run the rule over, well, largely actually the finals of the Premiership Rugby Under-18 Academy League with you. Although we can give him a bit of stick because he's kicked you out of your usual recording spot for today, so we'll have to. It's not all praise from these corners. He's a bit of a regular actually on the Next Gen 15 front at the moment. Is Sam Roberts? He was down at the Oakland Sevens. Cracking tournament. I think he had his work cut out there because there were about 6 different competitions going on. Absolute chaos, but brilliant sevens at the same time.
It's one of the things that you don't realise have to be on your CV when you become a Next Gen commentator is like A-level maths. Where you've got to be able to calculate loads of different points and scores and who goes where and whatever, and something they don't tell you about when you enter the job. But then you go, oh, all right, okay, I've got to figure out who's feeding where in what position, who's been the bowl, plate, spoon, knife, fork, who's doing everything. Yeah,
you get your work cut out. It's a grounding experience at all times. You get to see the real how the sausage is made. Exactly. In terms of how all these things go together. But no, massive thanks to him for stepping in a couple of weeks ago. But as you say, it's because it's been absolute chaos the last couple of weeks. In a good sense, there has been a lot going on, and I'll tell you what, there is a lot coming up. So we should crack on into it. Before we do that, though, I should remind everyone how to watch, get in touch, etc. You can watch, listen, etc. on YouTube, Acast, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, anything with the word podcast in it, I think is how to do it. I mean, if you've got this far, then you must have worked that out already. And you can get in touch with us on @NextGen15, @NextGenXV, and indeed on the NextGen15 Clubhouse, NextGen15 Clubhouse on Instagram, etc. Will, under 20 Six Nations, we've had the fallow week. We're back in business. I spoke to Angus Hall. We're going to hear from him in a little bit, but it's reaching that crescendo point, isn't it? And it's looking likely that it's going to be a title for England.
It is, and it's a pretty exciting time. I think this weekend could be a really, really interesting one. I think that you've got a set of multiple teams that are kind of at varying trajectories over the course of their sort of under-20s campaign. England obviously flying high. That game against Italy at the Rec, I think probably will go England's way. Although England have named a fair amount of rotation. I'm really liking that. I think like they know they've got this strength and depth, so it's not really rotation. Like these are players that if they were starting the first round, there would have been no eyebrows raised, or competing in the first round. A lot of them are sort of coming off the bench, but it also means that like these players are able to get international experience and sort of cycle through rather than playing the same 23 each week, because you want to give them time in an England shirt because there's so many different avenues, and rugby's a funny sport, and your top players could end up with injuries and whatever and here and there. So it's brilliant to see them sort of rotating. Italy, I think, will come into that game with a bit of sort of fire under their belly, having sort of not really hit the spots that they probably would have liked to have done so far. And then, like, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on England-Italy before we sort of stuck into what I think is the most exciting game of the round. But we'll start with England-Italy first.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, as you say, Italy probably haven't been quite where they want to be, but I do get the sense that there's a big performance in there, and they'll probably be looking at this and going, well, England have rotated a bit. They've taken a few of those big stars out of the pack, particularly, Kepu Tuipulotu on the bench, and that might be enough to sort of write the team talk for them in a way. And so this could be the game where they step up. But from an England point of view, I mean, they've just been brilliant. We'll hear in a minute. Spoke to Angus Hall, and he was talking about, or we were discussing how the first two games of the campaign were quite forward dominant, and very much about grinding out that victory and squeezing the opposition. Against Scotland, the backs got a chance to show their hand a little bit, and he was very, very excited about what the backs might be able to do in this game. And I think that's right. I mean, you look at that back line, and it is brilliant. And a guy like Angus is kind of central to that. But the back three in particular, really exciting. If they can still get enough punch to get that front foot ball, and you look at the pack and they should still be able to get that, there is something very exciting out in the wide channels to go and play. And they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, sort of all focus on it. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some good stuff. I think it could be an exciting performance.
Yeah, indeed, and I'd be interesting to hear about this chat with Angus, because he's obviously a player that is one of the many that has sort of taken to Premiership and European experience ahead of a lot of England 20s stuff, and I think I'm right in saying he's got another year as well with the under 20s. It might even be another year and a bit. I don't know about birthday or whatever. So to have a player like that can move around the sort of back line, very comfortable. I'd imagine he'd be very comfortable from literally 10 upwards, really. And to have him in his first year sort of nailing down a shirt that was probably a bit up in the air at the start of the tournament is a fascinating character.
Certainly is, and I tell you what, since we're on the subject of Angus Hall, let's listen to what Angus Hall had to say now. We're joined by Angus Hall. Angus, tell me about life in camp. How's the Six Nations been so far?
Yeah, camp's been brilliant. I mean, 3 wins from 3, getting off to a great start. I mean, people would put their eyes on Six Nations like going for the win, but as a team, we spoke about not getting complacent, taking it game by game, week by week. Yeah, vibe in camp's brilliant. Everyone's getting on really well. Smiles on faces.
Nice. You're the first. We've been speaking to a lot of the lads through the Six Nations. You're the first back we've spoken to since Charlie Griffin before the first game. It's been all forwards dominant, and I suppose the forwards in a way have been grabbing a lot of the headlines because you've got some guys there that have been doing some big stuff in the Premiership and in Europe, and Henry's been in between you guys and the senior side, and and potentially get some chances this weekend. But you're a guy who's got a lot of experience under his belt now, actually, and it's probably feels like it's all come around pretty fast. I mean, were you expecting to have this much Saracens experience this soon?
I mean, no, not really. I came into pre-season after coming out of school, just like thinking I'd hold a bag and not really get much involvement at all. So I guess being given the opportunity has been amazing. Like even senior players in the club, like Goody and Elliot Daly, have been really good. And then the opportunities from the coaches playing Premiership and Champions Cup has been incredible. Didn't expect any of it and can't wait for more.
And I guess, I mean, you mentioned Elliot Daly there. I mean, you're different sorts of players, but I suppose you share a similar trait in that you're pretty comfortable from kind of 12 out, I suppose. Very similar to him. Is he someone who's been working quite closely with you in terms of how you deal with being able to play with that range of positions, the opportunities it presents, and the adaptations you have to make in each different role?
Yeah, I mean, he's been really good, especially on pitch. So like during little sessions, just having little words, being like, look, you can do this better, do this next time, stuff like that. But when I was playing centre, wing, fullback, he's been pretty good at all of it. May fly off, I have to, but not really. No, he's been really good. Yeah.
I remember I was out in, you were playing England under-18s out in South Africa a couple of years back. And this was the first time I think I realised that you've got a bit of adaptability about you. was I think one of the kickers had gone down in the warm up or something, or had been injured in midweek and was fit to start, but not fit to kick. And I saw you on one of the back pitches practicing your kicking, and at that time, I don't think it was as widely known that you were as adaptable as you are. And I remember saying to one of the coaches, "That looks like Angus Hall getting his kicking boots on. What's going on here?" And they went, "Just you wait." And then out you went. You kicked brilliantly, played well. But has that always been something that to you has been a part of your game? Is just being able to adapt and being able to bring a range of skills to a range of roles?
Yeah, I mean, to be able to play as many positions as possible is probably another thing to get your name on the team sheet. And then obviously, and the kicking on the side is perfect as well. I haven't really done it much recently, but through my school years, I did it for school and at club, then 18 Saracens, and then obviously got the opportunity out in South Africa last minute. So that's definitely something I want to get back going, get some long range goal kicking going.
And yet another trait similar to Elliot Daly. We're adding them up here. We'll get into the 20 stuff in a moment or two, but I do want to just sort of go back to your school days a little bit, because there's been a lot of stuff about schools at the moment in the press, and we don't need to get into it. But you were at the Judd School, the state school that's really been punching high and getting some great results. I mean, back in your time, I think you got a victory at Tunbridge, the big public school in the region, and you went and turned them over and stuff like that. Does it must fill you with a lot of pride that where you see, lots of guys for various reasons move schools, etc. You stayed in that one place and had great success with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it came from our head coach, Damien Riley. He was like a massive lover of rugby. And he was like always dragging people along sessions, like even when it was like minus degrees in winter, and he's like, "We're turning up, let's do this." He was a big driver, but I think coming from state school background, it's like you see all these private schools getting the headlines and stuff like that, and you just want to be like, "Oh, why are we not on there? We're doing just as well," sort of thing. I think we're quite lucky. I had quite a good age group. So obviously, boys who only get into the school, they get certain grades. So we're kind of lucky that we had a good age group and the year above us. So yeah, we had quite a lot of success through our years. Not so much sevens, not really a bit of us, but 15s we did well.
We can't have it all, can we? But hey, getting it right on the 15s field, and you did get it right spectacularly. And let me tell you that Damien's still your biggest fan. He gets in touch with us quite often to make sure that we're aware of just how well things have been going, and they have been going well. And they've been going well in the Six Nations. Three from three. I think technically you can seal the title this weekend, but that involves a load of maths that we don't need to get into right now. But Italy coming up, obviously 3 from 3 going in, but Italy have been a side that have been developing a lot over the last few years. They're a real threat now, and particularly in the age group levels. Boys must be sort of aware it's a big challenge, but also excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, we're aware of the challenges in front of us. We're aware that we're top of the table, probably at the moment favourites to win, but we've spoken a lot about this week, not getting complacent and overthinking about ourselves, taking it day by day almost and looking at like a new challenge each week. Cause, like the boys around us, names on the team sheet, we know what we're capable of, but it's just gelling as a team and I guess doing what stick to the game plan, not trying to go about ourselves in our own ways.
Yeah, and it's you've obviously got Ireland and France playing against each other, which is a massive game and massive in the context of the 20s table. But you guys, the impression I get is that you've been quite sort of, in a positive sense, very much focused on what's happening inside and what you guys are all up to and how you come together as a team. And I know right at the start of the Six Nations, there was a real push on this sort of brotherhood element of the squad. It looks like it's been like that on the pitch as well. You only have to look at, a guy like George Timmins was not in the starting team, and then second game up, he comes in, he gets man of the match, and the boys are all chuffed for him. It does seem like you're almost like a club side in a way in terms of how you're all getting on.
Yeah, no, it's something we massively drive in around the area. I think we do call it brotherhoods, and we honestly mean it. Like, we are really tight to the group. There's no like little cliques, other than the extra boys maybe, but I don't know about that. But no, it's good. We just emphasise it massively because then on the pitch, obviously, it's like celebrating the little things. Boys enjoy it more on the pitch, more likely to work for each other when it gets to 70th minute, it gets tough, stuff like that, smiles and faces. So yeah, it's been really good. It's something we really pride ourselves on.
And is there a feeling that you're part of something special? I mean, a lot's been spoken about this group, that it's a talented group. There's guys that have had a lot of opportunity, yourself among them, to play, big high level rugby early on in their careers. Does it feel like you're a part of something that's special?
I mean, yes, obviously after last year and the group we had last year, there's obviously big expectations of us to back it up and go unbeaten and stuff like that. I think we're definitely capable of it. We know we are, and you don't see us not trying and training and stuff like that. Like, everyone's heads down, probably trying all the time. So we all, as a group, know what we want to get out this year, and that is obviously winning everything. I think, as every team would be. So yes, we've got the names, but we still got to perform as a team together.
Who are the guys in training that are relentless? When you want them to just drop it 5%, but they just won't do it. Who are those guys?
Louis Gully, he's an absolute monster on the training field. He never slacks off. He's always put 100% effort in. Connor Treaty, I would say as well. You don't really hear these names much, but these two they're training like really hard every week. Really want to get their names on the team sheet, and might go onto the radar, but they definitely deserve their spots in teams.
Yeah, I can imagine that from Connor. Actually, a bit of a sort of, I don't want to slap a label on him, but a kind of Curry-esque attitude. I've always got that sense out of him.
Yeah, he's similar.
And just sort of, looking at those guys around you. I mean, obviously you've got Henry jumping in and out of the senior setup phase. Kind of been in it now for a good old while. But some of the other guys as well. Does it make it feel like that step from where you are today, particularly actually when you throw in the experience you've had with Saracens and in Prem and in Europe? Does it make it feel like that step from where you are today to the England team is much more tangible? Probably a few years ago there was a sense that if you were in the 20 squad, you were quite a long way still from the England team. Does it feel like it's close and in reach?
Yeah, he's basically the prime example of how close we are. I mean, you got to take every opportunity you can, and he's done that really well. Whether that's at Saints, England Day, he played really well. But yeah, it just shows you that the targets you have set aren't really too far away. It's the next couple of years. So you just got to take every opportunity you can, whether that's a club or at 20s like we are here, flying towards it.
Is that something that you guys do? I mean, you don't need to tell me what your targets are personally or collectively, but is it something that you guys do as a squad? Do you sort of set those long-term ambitions out, or is that very much a personal thing?
Yeah, it can be personal. It could probably be both. I mean, we have got a psychologist who's really good at sitting down with you and being like, where do you want to go from here? What you work on, stuff like that. So target setting is something we look at, but if you want to keep it individual, you can, I guess.
Nice. Angus Hall for the Lions. That's what I'm hearing out of that. Listen, mate. Actually, that's a good point. When was the last? You might not know this. Have the Judd had an England international? I'm not sure.
I don't think we have. No, there's a couple of the champ.
There's a target for you, mate. There's a target. Become the first Judd international. I'm gonna have Damien pestering me now, telling me that there's been 27 and that they were all in 1912. And how did I not know that off the cuff? But it's definitely a great target. Listen, Italy at the weekend. We've got lots and lots of excitement from your side, obviously. Looking at the Italians, is there anything you've seen from them that sort of particularly grabbed the attention in terms of some of the stuff they do?
We noticed they kick a lot quite a lot as a team. I think they've got the highest amount of kicks in the tournament so far. So that's a massive opportunity for us with our backfield and the dangerous back three we have. to really show themselves what they're about and create some special tries for the team. Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, because obviously the first two games were quite tight games. Obviously, Ireland and France probably the two strongest sides in the competition that you suspect you'd be facing. But obviously opened the gates a little bit against Scotland. Is there a real aim to try and get that backfield into the game and to try and show some of that flair and excitement that you guys have got?
yeah, definitely is. And we know how exciting our backline is. It's just, yes, we've got all the big carries and all the forwards doing all the hard work, but at the end of the day, we want to show, I guess, what we're about and do all the flary stuff as well.
Tell me about some of it. Tell me about what can we expect from you outside breaks. What is Angus Hall, the rugby player, to those that don't know you?
Hardworking, aggressive in defence, I say, but realistically, at 13, you run a couple hard lines, give the ball to the wingers, and they'll do the special stuff out wide. So that's the role.
The facilitator.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, listen, mate, thanks so much for joining us. It's honestly really good to talk to you. And really, I know it seems like a sort of small point, but for a lot of kids out there, seeing a guy who's come through your pathway, being where you are is a massive thing. And particularly doing it as quickly as you've done it. So hats off to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, awesome. Angus Hall, thanks very much for joining us. We'll catch up with you soon. Good luck for the weekend.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
So that was Angus Hall, and as we were alluding to there, I mean, one of the big topics we were talking about there is how someone like Elliot Daly has been a guy who's been working really closely with, because of exactly what you're saying, Will. He from kind of 10 out, he's comfortable. I mean, obviously, a lot of his early experiences for Saracens have been out in the wing, because it's a little bit easier to bring a very, very young guy through out there. But we're seeing him in the centres for England. He says he's all right at 10. And, you can imagine him doing a job at fullback as well. It's an extraordinary range of skills he's got.
It's kind of the Saracens mould at the moment. You look at the sort of U group previous and Tobias Elliott. He's had a very similar trajectory of starting schoolboy at fly half, then moving into the centres of sort of academy league, and then sort of making his breakthrough a couple of years sort of with sort of Amstel, then Saracens, and then now England A at sort of wing and fullback. And it means you have these sort of players that are so much more well defined and appreciative of the players around him. I know we've both spoken to fly halves at sort of up and down the sort of levels, and what they'll always say is they love having players outside them that can fill in at fly half, because they appreciate and understand and can be the eyes and ears or can read sort of the mind of the 10, because that's what they would do in that scenario. And I think Angus in particular is one of those players so intelligent at being able to read these sort of scenarios, which stands him in really, really good stead if he's got that sort of on lock from sort of his teenage years.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I sort of asked him the question about what is Angus Hall the player? What are your strengths? And actually, largely what he focused on were the as Paul O'Connell once said, the sort of things that you can be world class at without having any talent. It was all about his work ethic and his game understanding and his sort of facilitator role. And he's got a lot more to him than that. He was being very modest, but it is a real lesson for guys who are of that sort of end of school to start of pro level. It was a real lesson in actually, you can be a good player, but that's not really what it's about. It's really about doing all of those other bits and bobs that feel like the things that aren't that, they're not what make you special, but actually they are the things that make you special, because it is about being world class at all of those things that are just this simple, anyone could do them, but not very many people do them bits. A massive lesson that for, particularly for school kids and guys that are coming through, of just work ethic and hitting rucks, facilitating people around you. It matters an awful lot more than having a great outside break.
So much of the unseen work which is sort of categorized so heavily in the way that England want to play, in that brotherhood that they continue to sort of come back to. Looking ahead as well, the game I'm itching to talk about is Wales-Scotland, because I actually think there's so much intrigue in this game, purely from like a narrative perspective, because Wales seem to be on. I don't want to say it, but they seem to be on the up. They seem to be
flying, don't they?
They seem to be flying, and seem to be performing really well. Whereas Scotland, it was, I think, a bit of an umming and ahhing, sort of no expectations going into the Six Nations. Let's see what happens. But are almost coming out of it because they've performed well in patches, but not well overall. They'll actually probably be coming into this game quite frustrated. Despite having sort of with minimal expectation in their first couple of games, like England, Scotland, and Italy are the three they've played so far. Like three of the sort of top sides. So yeah, I'd hit with you first, being a proud Scot. What your sort of thoughts are, because I think this is going to be a fascinating contest.
It's a funny one, isn't it? I mean, if I was in that Scotland camp, I would basically just be writing that England game off and just going there. What they're trying to do here is not the same thing.
Yeah.
And just sort of mentally just remove it completely. The only thing I'd take from it is the feeling of frustration, and I'd head into this Wales game with that. And you look at the Scotland side. There are guys in that team that can do some damage. I mean, we've spoken about him loads, but Ruben Logan is way up on almost all of the stats charts on this Six Nations. He's been absolutely flying. And alongside him in the back row, the skipper, Freddie Douglas, he's got a Scotland cap. Gregor Townsend is keen to accelerate his progress as much as possible. This is the sort of game where I can see that kind of back row combination really going, Joel, we're going to show these boys. And if your back row gets on top at any level of rugby, you tend to be in a pretty good place. So there is that big window there for this Scotland side, and there is some talent in there. They've got to show it. And for them, this is probably the game. This is the one they'll probably have, quietly, maybe in the coaching group, looked at the start of the campaign and gone, this is where we might get a win. Conversely, Wales probably thought exactly the same at the start of the Six Nations as well. They just happened to have picked up some early form, but they will have been focused on this. They'll, as I mentioned, fallow weeks. There's 2 weeks prep. Wales feeling confident. I think it's a tall order for Scotland to win it, but it's their best chance, and we see that do funny things. If we look up at the senior Six Nations, it's Italy over the last few years. Their best performances have come against Scotland, and Scotland have had a very good team. But because Italy have always targeted that game as being the game, their performance levels step up, similar to Scotland against England, where those two sides over the last 5-6 years have probably been not far off comparable, and yet by and large Scotland dominated that fixture because it's the game. So there is maybe a bit of that. We'll see how it goes, but I think I don't know what you think, Will, but I think this Wales side has got some momentum now and a bit of belief, and a little bit of belief coming down from the seniors as well. There's maybe just something bubbling.
Yeah, I think that they've found a real continuity in their spine. Like I'm looking at this sort of Wales under-20 side now. Ian Emmanuel and Sam Scott seem to be coming into their own in sort of Welsh colours. Harry Beddle, the skipper at open side, like certainly leading from the front. Like we've got to remind ourselves, this is a Wales team without Morgan Morse, who has been the trailblazer for this Welsh under-20 side for what feels like forever. Really, it feels like he's been under-20s for about 5 years. And he's not involved here. Then I think Harry Ford and Stefan Emmanuel, sort of that 10-12 combo, has been really beneficial. Two sort of kicking outside halves, inside centres that can control a game really well. And then that back three of Boshoff, Bowen, Reece Weldon, has just provided moments that sort of that have turned tides, and we talk about international games are moments. It's sort of 5 or 6 moments you get that win or lose you the game. And Wales have found a way to capitalise on moments over the last couple of games, whereas Scotland, that's been their downfall, is that they've let moments go. And it's going to come down to that this weekend, well, tonight. And I think it's going to be an absolutely fascinating contest. But I do think Wales are going to pick up another win. And there's a world in which Wales go into that final game against England sort of with a bit of form underneath their belt and can go, what's there to lose? Let's go and disrupt England. They would love nothing more than England to be on a Grand Slam and just go, we've got other ideas, and potentially put in a fight. So I think they win this game with a bit of a statement win. I think the first couple of wins they've had have just been getting over the line. They were to be able to sort of take this game really well. That's sort of Super Friday, I guess. Next.
Well, yeah. What do you call it on a Friday? Fantastic Friday. There we go. We'll call it that. Will's screen is frozen, so I'm going to jump in and we're going to talk about the France-Ireland game, because actually building from what you were saying, Will, about the Wales game, England could well wrap up this title this weekend, and in a way, the reason that maybe that door is slightly opened is because France and Ireland are playing each other. It's unlikely, you suspect, that there's going to be a bonus point victory there for a team. It's probably going to be a reasonably tight game, which means that England might have the title wrapped up, which, as you say, possibly opens the door for Wales springing a surprise against England next week, because England might have just had a little bit of a party. I'm sure that Toffty will probably keep them under wraps, but there's always that mental that sort of, well, it's already done. So maybe that might open the door, because Ireland versus Wales should be a tight game. How do you see it going?
I'm actually going to go a bit controversial and say that I think France is going to win this game quite comfortably, and I think Ireland are in a bit of trouble. I think they've been treading water a little bit with the in the under-20 scene throughout the course of the Six Nations, and obviously that Wales score last time out was not how anyone really expected things to go. So I think Ireland do not look in good form, and France, if they can turn it on, if they decide they want to play a bit of rugby, I continue to go back to him, but I think Robin Takala is such a pivotal point for them. I think we always talk about the French forwards, because at under 20s level, that's always been the difference, because they're usually bigger and stronger. That's why sort of the French age grade sides do so well. It's not necessarily because they play better shape or they play better rugby. It's usually because of the physicality.
Physical development, yeah.
Exactly. Whereas I think sort of now a lot of the different nations are sort of slightly starting to match that. You look at England, for example. England have now got a massive pack.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of that French joker, as it were, is up their sleeve, is starting to become less and less viable. So they need their players, their ball players, and their players outside to really start making an impact. I do think it could be France that could run away with it here. But I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think France are favourites. I think it'd be maybe tighter than you think, but I can buy the argument that Ireland haven't been on it. France, I don't think have been massively on it either, but they've been more so. But yeah, I mean, yeah, France favourites. I mean, for me, it's France, Wales, England. I think probably the tale writes itself in many ways.
It does, and I think as a whole, this under-20s campaign has actually been really, really exciting. There's been so many upsets. There's been so many scorelines that you sort of double check or have a look at. And I think these last 2 weeks have set themselves up really nicely for a nice grand finish.
Certainly have. And following the conclusion of the under-20s campaign, we almost head straight into under-18 international season, heading up towards the under-18 Six Nations festival. And literally this morning, England under-18 women have named their squad for a couple of games against one game against Hartpury College at the weekend, but they're playing a first half team and a second half team.
Of which includes a lot of Hartpury College players. So I think it's one of those.
Hartpury getting thoroughly involved on both sides of the ball.
Yeah,
there'll be some spicy head-to-heads, no doubt.
Exactly.
We're obviously going to get into the under-18s campaign sort of as that moves into view. That Six Nations. For anyone that doesn't kind of know how it works, it's not the same as the 20s or the senior Six Nations. It's not one game versus everyone. It tends to be a series of match days. Men's have tended to play 3 games over the course of a week, and the women's have tended to play 3 match days, but 2 shortened games in the first 2, and then a big game at the end. Not confirmed if that's the structure at the moment, but it's pretty likely to be. The bit I wanted to pick up though that was in the press release was that there is an England women's fixture against Ireland in preparation for that on Sunday the 30th of March, which is 2 days after the conclusion of the Howden Rossen Park National School Sevens. There is an entire podcast in the debate about why on earth we are forcing these clashes onto people and making them make decisions and denying them memories and all the rest of it. And the argument that's always made is that, well, playing for England is an honour. And it is. I would never deny that. It's a massive honour. But they don't need to play 2 or 3 days after a competition, which means, therefore, that those players can't play in the school competition, can't make those memories. They could. It's the Easter holidays. They play on a Tuesday if they want. There's no reason to be forcing these clashes on people. And it's true in the men's game as well. I have no doubt that there'll be a fixture list released and that there'll be a men's game probably on the Saturday, maybe on the Sunday, which will mean that half the players at Rossen Park, or half the players from that team, won't be able to play at Rossen Park. It is ridiculous, continues to be ridiculous, has been the case for as long as I can remember, and it just never changes. There is no reason for these games to clash. There is a seasonal structure to the school game that is pretty clearly defined by the fact that schools operate on a term-by-term basis. You don't have to do much research to work out when stuff's going to happen. There's then whacking great holidays. Put the fixtures in the holidays far enough away from when the last game was. That way everyone can play everything. It's easy. It's so much easier.
It is. And I think it's a sort of the poison chalice of the women's game and how it's structured is that obviously all the way up to the senior game, it's ruled by England. England trump the cards because they have the contracts. And we talk a lot about, I think the last podcast me and you were both doing, we talked about sort of centralization and drafts and whatnot. And on paper, like the benefit of the women's game sort of still being developed and adapted and growing now is that we've got an opportunity for it to be malleable and made for the sort of modern times, which I think in parts has worked really well. Like, for example, let's take this under-18 women's sort of match that's happening against Hartpury College. All these teams, they don't play academy fixtures, as it were. They are regionalised areas. So I think they're all called sort of little PDGs. So you've got like the Maggie Alfonsi PDG, the Emily Starrett PDG. Which is brilliant because it doesn't overload players. It means that they prioritise playing in like the ACE colleges and schools, and then we'll sort of play for England, and that works really well. And it means that you don't have the conflict always. I mean, we've just got through it, but the conflict the last couple of weeks has always been sort of academy or school. And you add on an international to that, and then you've got 3 different sort of avenues in the men's game all pulling for the same player in one direction, and a player will have particular ties to each one. Would you play for your boyhood club, the school you've been at for however long, with all your mates you spent all your time at, or your home nation? Your heart would be pulled in three directions. So the women's game has been good to avoid that. But as you say, like, England, the downside of it is that now England hold all the cards. They have access to all of these women's players at the drop of a hat, and we're seeing it here. And yeah, like it's a difficult landscape for them to be in, but yeah,
I think there's truth in the fact that England hold the cards on that, but I also think they have a responsibility or even a duty to go. Just because we hold the cards doesn't mean that we don't have to, or that we shouldn't think about the wider scenario here. For instance, play the game on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then you've avoided the whole problem. Just because you hold the card doesn't mean you need to deny people the chance to do things. You know, it's school girls rugby isn't deep. It does not. There's not a huge amount of competitive opportunity. There's not a lot of big tournaments. The Howden Roslin Park National School Sevens is that opportunity, and a whole bunch of people are getting pulled away. And on a similar tack, you know, we've got an England under-17s men's camp this weekend. There's also under-17s academy games. It's a huge weekend of school sevens as they build towards the Roslin Park Sevens, as I mentioned. Now, those under-17s games and those under-17s camps, A, huge honour, B, necessary, but they don't need to be this week. There was a half term 2 weeks ago. Put the camp in a half term. Again, it doesn't have to be at a weekend. If it's a half term, you could have the camp on a Wednesday and a Thursday. Everyone's happy. It is mind-blowing that there is not more understanding, empathy as to how to fix the calendar. But this is, you know, there will be schoolmasters up and down the country that are jumping up and down and saying, I've got something to add to this as well, because it's not new. It's been around for a while. It actually leads me onto a topic that was part of the reason actually that I wasn't able to be on the previous podcast, which was because I was you know, showing off basically, and place the Daily Telegraph above the Next Gen 15 podcast, which is shameful. But I was speaking to Charlie Morgan of the Telegraph on a subject that I think is really important. We were talking about the wider sort of impact of VAT coming in on independent schools and what impact that might have in a rugby sense around scholarships, etc. But one of the things that we got talking about, and that came into the eventual piece that he wrote a little bit, was about the role of schools in rugby, and not just in terms of opportunities for players and the process of developing players and bringing them through, and the sort of working with academies and with England, etc., but also the role of schools in actually providing the next generation of rugby supporters, rugby season ticket holders, rugby journalists and media types, and how that is not just your first team players, that is your under 14Ds, etc. You know, I think, you know, you and I are relatively similar. I was a okay schoolboy player, played first 15 in my last year, but I was, you know, lucky to. But here I am doing this. You know, similar-ish story for you.
Yeah.
You are involved in the game, and that is, you know, that is massive. And we're just two examples. You know, we could, you know, Charlie Morgan is another.
Yeah,
Probably
another.
every other rugby writer is another example, and it's perhaps the forgotten part that if you take away the sort of role that schools play in rugby, and you kind of look at many of the arguments that often get put forth about how the game is too independent, school dominated, etc., which, you know, is a again another podcast unto itself. But what you would remove very quickly is all of those other pieces in the
Yeah.
rugby makeup. Because I'm sure, you speak to anyone, most of the people that I'm sure, who love their rugby, who aren't playing professional rugby, probably weren't first teamers.
No. Yeah, and I'm actually going to hit you with a couple stats because, again, not necessarily prepared, but one.
Well, as we
that
say,
I
Next
heard-
Gen 15 is basically a maths exam, so
Yeah, one that I heard this week that really really shocked me. So rugby in the UK has, well, rugby in England, I think it is, has over 4 million lapsed fans. So those are fans that are not directly engaged in the sport. 50% of them are between the ages of 16 and 35. So there are over 2 million people that were fans or supporters of it, you'd assume during school, because let's face it, a lot of them were not forced, but you strongly encouraged at school. There's no one when you're sort of 21, 22 telling you that on a Tuesday and Thursday afternoon you have to go and kick a ball around. If there are, then you need to probably go speak to someone about that. But like that's the case when you're growing up. And then they lose touch with the sport because there's no sort of capture there to sort of collect them. And it's the thing that I think rugby academies are starting to get a lot better at. And obviously academies and schools link in arm, and I think that relationship between schools and academies has got so much better over the last sort of 5 years. But one of the things that I think they really miss a trick on is they focus so much on the 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 they sign straight out of school. And maybe they'll send a couple off to university as well. But then you've got a pool of dedicated rugby fans. You have to be a fan to play the game. Dedicated rugby fans that are affiliated to your club in one way or another, that have at least sort of 2 or 3 members of family that would have been directly supporting them as well. You've got that sort of 40, 50 times over in a sort of under 18 bracket that didn't then just travel off into the ether and are not captured and are not gained. And you don't come back as season ticket holders, that might also go on to incredibly successful jobs in the city and then go sponsor their local football club or go sponsor sort of another sporting endeavor. Whereas like you can house these players, and if you look after them and connect them more with the sport at that sort of age, then you can set up that. You've got a captured audience. You've got a captured audience right there that are connected to the sport that we just let go of. Yeah. And it's such a head scratcher. And I definitely think that's where rugby can do so much better, because they're like, oh, how do we engage the young fans? Where are the young fans? They're there. They're playing for you. Yeah. Your rugby is a sport that a lot of people will get introduced to playing first before watching, because you almost have to. It's quite a tactile learning experience. I think you have to know the game inside out.
It's a lot easier to understand a ruck if you've been in one.
Yes, agreed. Although I haven't been in any, so I wouldn't know.
You've watched quite a lot of close quarters.
I've watched loads, really close. Yeah, I think like so a lot of people get introduced to it through playing, and most of that will be through schools, and that's where that's where you hook people. But they don't then capitalize on it. Rugby does not then capitalize on it. And I think, I'm trying to remember some of the other stats that I saw, but there's some really interesting research. I would encourage people to go have a look at the research that Prem Rugby have done on fan engagement and sort of audience and demographic of rugby in the UK. Because their research that they've put into it is really, really fascinating and eye-opening, and certainly sort of shows you where the holes are. And a lot of them can be fixed with keeping people engaged after immediately leaving the schoolboy rugby scene.
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that I was really keen to put across to Charlie was, independent schools get a lot of stick. You watch. I guarantee we've just put a post out. Well, the England under-17 squad that I mentioned earlier. I guarantee if we stroll into the comments section of that, it will be littered with people talking about imports and talking about how it's just a public school dominated sport and all the rest of it. Independent schools get a lot of stick for their, when it comes to rugby. I mean, in general, but when it comes to rugby, they get a lot of stick. And someone somewhere, and maybe it's down to us as a company to do it. It has to go and stand up for them, because if you take out independent schools from the rugby landscape, I genuinely believe rugby in England collapses. I just don't think it. People talk about how there's an untapped market in state schools, and if we could just get more state school players, and that's true to an extent. But what you're asking to happen there is for rugby to start to almost take fans and players and coaches and media types from football. That's just not going to happen. Football is the most popular sport in the country, and it's the easiest sport to play. All you need is a ball and a bit of grass.
It's a battle that's lost. It's a battle that's lost already, and rugby assumes that it will do all right if it changes course, and sort of disregards traditional fan bases for, like, realistically, having fans is half the battle. You need those fans then to transfer their disposable income into the game. Yeah. And you're not, the only way that you can engage those fans is by fully dedicating yourselves towards them. And you can't have that many fingers in that many pies. You can't please everyone. And realistically, you need to be in an area or dedicate yourselves to the people that were there first and wanted it first. Yeah. Because there's, like, if people from, it's not like rugby is hidden. It's on free-to-air TV. If people from state schools, well, God, yeah, it's a different story. If people from different walks of life wanted to, or were interested in rugby and wanted to play rugby, they can. They just don't want to. And sometimes I think we might have to make peace with that.
Well, it's okay not to want to play rugby.
Not everyone has to do it.
It is a niche-ish sport. It's not the biggest sport in the country. It's probably not the second biggest sport in the country. That's probably what it's competing to be. And by the way, I should point out, none of this is to in any way knock what's going on in state school rugby, which is phenomenal. I mean, we broadcast.
Well, look at the. I was going to say, John Fisher Festival. Look at the Schools Cup over the last couple of years. Like, you look at
just incredible. I mean, we'll get onto it in a bit, but Northampton School for Boys, wow.
Yeah, NSB.
Old Swinford Hospital won that John Fisher Festival. The work that has been done in state schools that play rugby is amazing, and they are equally vital to the game completely. And they're doing some brilliant things. And if we can convert a few more schools to join in and get involved with rugby, brilliant. We should absolutely be aiming for that. What we shouldn't be doing is, as a route to getting there, bashing the independent schools who've been doing it as well. You go, what? It's not that one can't exist without the other. Yeah, you don't, to say we should be trying to attract more state schools to play rugby and we should praise the state schools that do, is not the same thing as saying, so that makes all the independent schools terrible people. They're just people who play rugby. Anyone who plays rugby, we should be going, this is awesome. Please stay in the game. Not, well, you're the wrong people, so we don't want you. It's madness. It's utter madness. But we really could do a full podcast on that.
We could.
Speaking of schools, it's been part of the reason, actually, that last week's podcast went was because it's been absolute madness on the schools rugby front. Sevens coming out of our ears. We've already spoken about Sam Roberts being down at the Oakham Sevens, which actually we were speaking earlier about how there's not that many competitive girls competitions in the build-up to Rosslyn Park. Oakham was one of them, under 14s, 16s and 18s. Brooksby Melton College winning the under 18s. They also had the boys competition where Oundle did brilliantly under 16s, and Bromsgrove took the title under 18s. And Sam did mention that they were excellent. Elsewhere, you've got Sedbergh absolutely flying, Millfield flying. There was a great competition down at Dunatar School, well, actually at Old Ruggations, but hosted by Dunatar School, which is a sort of rejigged Surrey Sevens. The real Surrey, not the real, that's incorrect. The traditional Surrey Sevens is still happening on the 19th, but there was a new Surrey Sevens down at Old Ruggations on Wednesday it was brilliant actually. It was two-tier competition, emerging schools and established schools, which meant that everyone got their level of competition. Bishop won against Cranley in the final of the sort of established schools competition, and Dunatar as hosts actually managed to take victory in the emerging competition. So there's some real good sevens building up, and I'm excited about what's to come. I think you're starting to look at, I mean, some of your usual players, you said Busy Millfields have got titles. I think Cranley, although they've not picked up any major silverware yet, looking good. So the school seven scene is hotting up. What is also hotting up, well, really hotting up, I mean, we're into the big time now, is the Schools Cup. Semi-finals were last weekend across the continental tyres, under 18s and under 15 Schools Cup, I should call it. Any tyre companies that want to come to us, I've mentioned it before, Pirelli, Michelin, you're more than welcome. Bridgestone, I'll take you all. But the Continental Tyres Schools Cup semi-finals are at the weekend, and then on the 11th, 12th and 13th of March are the finals. We're going to have some stuff up on the website and on socials about some of the bowls, the bars, the plates, etc. But I will just run through what those finals are. So the under 15s bowl, Wyndham College against Plymouth College, under 15s vase, St Paul's against Bishop Stortford High School, and the under 15 plate, Kirkham Grammar School against Radley. That is pretty tasty for a plate.
Yeah.
They're at Ealing Trailfinders Tuesday the 11th of March. And in the under 18s, Wednesday the 12th of March, again at Ealing, the bowl final, Hayes against King's Ely, and the plate final, Daunseys against St Anselm's College. St Anselm's College and Daunseys have both been amazing this year, actually. And then in the Vase, which is at Allianz Stadium, it will be King's Gloucester against King Edward's Birmingham. But we're going to focus in on the two cup finals a little bit, because actually partly if we start with the under 15s, we mentioned them before, Northampton School for Boys. Oh, what they are doing down there is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, the David against the Goliaths on so many occasions, just in terms of sort of the resources they have in comparison to some of these sort of independent schools. But like they continue to punch above their weight, and I think that they've kind of had this snowball effect now of having had a really sort of successful few years. There are now players and students that are keen to go to NSB to hone in on their rugby, to make them even better and better, and then that sort of will continue and continue and continue. And because they worked so hard to begin with, they're now reaping the rewards of, like, I think getting to an under 15s cup final is almost sometimes more, from a school point of view, like if you were sort of sitting on some sort of school board, is more exciting than getting to an under 18s competition, because you've been able to develop that talent so early, and you will then hopefully retain that talent over the next sort of 3 or 4 years. So to NSB, it's a brilliant place for them to be.
It's absolutely incredible. It's a third final in a row. So they won the competition in 2023, got to the final last year, back in the final this year. Their semi-final performance against Hyman's College was just unbelievable. They're facing Lord Wandsworth College. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff Tuesday at Ealing Trailfinders, that one. Tuesday the 11th of March, a week on Tuesday. No, not a week on Tuesday, 3 days' time. God, my calendar is all out of whack at the moment. Lord Wandsworth, worth a shout. We were live down there for their quarter-final against Collegiate, which was dramatic to say the least, but some dead-eye kicking got them across the line. But they went into the semi-final. They'd only lost one game all season, and they took on Wellington College in the semi-final, who were the only team that had beaten them all season, and they got the victory, got their own back on them to get into the final. Absolutely incredible. That's really tasty. Lord Wandsworth College against Northampton School for Boys. You know, in a weird way, probably for the first time, NSB are in that final going, oh, we might be Goliath now. And that's a funny sort of turn of events for them. So that's going to be a cracking final. Then Thursday, 13th of March, which is this Thursday coming up, now that I know which way around the calendar is. We should actually touch very briefly on the Ace Girls final. Will open things up. Exeter College against Hartbury College. Exeter College across those two under 18s teams that are playing this Saturday have got, I think, 6 players across those two squads. But
wow,
very, very exciting, that one. What a fantastic final that's going to be. But 4:30 is that under 18 Continental Tires Schools Cup final between Queggs Wakefield and Harrow. Harrow bidding for back-to-back, which my yardstick always is if you win back-to-back in this competition, you sort of move into the pantheon of legends. A one-off, you can be an excellent side, but back-to-back is a sort of sign of being one of the real legends of the school game. But Queggs Wakefield kind of, although they've not, I don't actually think they've won an under-18 cup, but they've reached final after final after final over the course of the last 40 years. It's unbelievable. I mean, they are an undeniable legend of the competition. They just don't have the silverware to show for it. Got past Warwick in the most dramatic of circumstances in their semi-final, but there's something about those two, isn't there? They, no matter the age group, they seem to find themselves up against each other in big knockout games. I don't know how it keeps happening, but
I know it's like one of the most like unexpected rivalries ever. Like you can imagine, like just this sort of random Queggs, Wakefield, Yorkshire, Lancaster.
Yorkshire. Yeah.
My geography is not good enough. Yorkshire against this sort of this London-based outfit. You wouldn't expect their paths to cross as much as they do. But I love that they do, because I think the styles of rugby are same but different. Like they both play with such physicality and sort of ball speed and pride their set piece, but also like Harrow will have sort of 3-4 phases of set plays, whereas Queggs Wakefield play a lot more sort of heads up rugby and play what's in front of them and have this knack for winning games. So I think as a narrative, I always turn towards narratives in these sort of competitions, because I think we could talk for days about the tactics, who's going to win here, who's going to do what. And predictions so far in this podcast have not served me well. Sort of Pirates and Northampton Saints has still come back to bite me. So I'm just going to stick to the narrative and say that it's a really exciting occasion. I'm going to throw to you and say, who do you think is going to win it?
It's an amazing occasion, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. We are going to have to possibly send you back to school for your geography, though. Warwick, based in Warwickshire, unsurprisingly.
Warwick, based in Warwickshire, that makes sense.
Who would have thought it? But no, it's the narrative is, as you say, amazing. I mean, the history of Queggs in this tournament speaks for itself, which almost leads to sort of, if I'm writing a preview, almost my first half of it is dealt with by the fact that I just talk about Queggs' history in this competition. And then you look at Harrow and you go, they won it last year with this incredible team, absolutely outstanding. And 2 weeks later, they went to Rosslyn Park, having played no sevens all season because they've been doing this, and then got themselves to the final. That was just a special, special team. This side has some tremendous players in it, but they've not had the record that last year's side had. They've really had to dog it out. I mean, we saw in their semi-final against RGS High Wycombe, that was tight as tight can be. They had to dog it out. They really had to. But they've got themselves into the final, and now they're in this place where they are there waiting to join the greats of the competition. As a story, it's utterly compelling. What way do I think it'll go? I think Harrow arrive as favourites,
Yeah, I agree.
but I think Queggs will not see it that way. Queggs, I think, have only lost one game all season. They had a tough outing at the St Joseph's Festival, but I suspect that's probably served them well in this competition, because I think they were absolutely flying going to St Joe's, probably had quite high expectations, and maybe just the pressure and the relentless quality got to them a little bit. They'll have learned from that, and this is another high pressure occasion, and this is a chance to show, well, we've worked it out and we know what to do now. Harrow, almost conversely, they've had an excellent season, don't get me wrong, but they've had a tougher season results wise than Queggs have, albeit still one that's been hugely positive. But what they have is this unbelievable ability to play in high pressure games and perform. We only have to look at last year's final and the dramatic late score from Reggie Hammock to take victory. So it'll be an interesting game. Harrow for me start as favourites, but Queggs won't be seeing it that way at all. It's going to be a great occasion. Also, it is going to be packed at Twickenham on Thursday. Yeah. Absolutely packed. Queggs do not travel light, and Harrow aren't exactly having to travel far. So I suspect we'll see a good packed stadium. I think, do you know what, Will? I think we've covered all of the stuff that we said we were going to cover.
Yeah.
Which is astonishing.
In good time.
I was convinced we were going to be going for about 2 hours, because we've included a couple of rants from me in there. So we've done all right for time.
Exactly. Sub-hour sort of pod haul is pretty good.
We'll take that. Busy weekend for you?
No, actually, this is one of the first weekends, I think the first weekend of 2025 where I've got no direct involvement in rugby. I will be sitting on the sofa watching a bit of the Six Nations, I think. So I'm pretty happy with that. I know you're sort of up and down the country.
Well, I'm going to just redirect where your television set is pointing and send you towards the varsity match on Saturday. Well, the varsity
I'm sure I can make them both up. I'll watch the 12 and 3. So I'll watch
12 o'clock for the women's game,
then,
3 o'clock for the men's varsity matches. We've also we've got live netball on Saturday. Seaford Southern Sevens down at Chichester Uni. We've got England Touch starting at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's the Bucks University Touch Championships. So that's a nice day, isn't it? You start off 9 o'clock in the morning with a bit of touch, bit of netball, and then we get into the varsity matches, midday, 3 o'clock. We can record the Six Nations, watch that in the evening. That's no problem at all. It's not like there's big games this weekend or anything.
No, nothing really going on.
No, exactly. Ireland, France, what's that? Exciting. Don't know that.
Exactly.
And then on Sunday, it's down to the West of England Sevens down at Taunton School. That's going to be live. And also a bit more varsity action. Actually, the varsity match is hockey from Southfield Hockey Club. We're diversifying in a big way here at Next Gen 15, bringing it all in for you. If you want it live, we'll find a way of showing it somehow, some way. Richard Jackson, the magician, somehow manages to
spreadsheet extraordinaire.
Honestly, some of his spreadsheets are outstanding. There's color coding and everything. All I know is if it's in pink, he's not around. That's the lesson learned.
That's the key.
Right, that's it for us. Thanks very much for watching, listening, however you've consumed this. Do get in touch with any thoughts, questions, etc. I'd love to hear opinions about the game and the under-20s, the under-18s, schools, etc. As I said at the top of the show, at NextGen15 and at NextGen15 Clubhouse. Well done, Will. Thanks for joining me.
No, thank you, Angus. I'm glad we got through that unscathed.
Just about. We have no one's been in the comment section yet. They will be later.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Right now, everyone's happy with us before we put this out.
Exactly. Right. Well done.